Mama said I can only give you half, but you can have my half, too. The 11-year-old black girl pressed warm bread into the starving white boy's trembling hands. Rain hammered the tin roof of their tiny Mississippi farmhouse. It was October 2016, and the boy, 12 years old, ribs showing through his torn shirt, had been wandering for 2 weeks, eating from garbage cans. 3 days later, he stood on that same porch, wearing her dead father's oversized shirt. When I grow up, I'll come back super rich, and I'll marry you, I promise. She laughed through tears. You're silly. We're just kids. I never lie, he said. I don't know how. 10 years, 3 months, and 18 days later, a $65 million Gulfstream G650 descended toward that same farmhouse. The girl, now 21, still held the wooden comb he'd carved her. He kept every word. Subscribe and stay until the end. This promise changed everything. The sun bled orange across the Mississippi sky as Brianna Thompson walked the 3 miles home from Millbrook Community Clinic. Her nursing scrubs, faded from too many washes, stuck to her skin in the humid September air. She was 21 years old, 6 months out of nursing school, and already carrying a weight that would crush most people twice her age. Her phone buzzed. Mama. Baby, I talked to Mr. Hall again today. Dorothy Thompson's voice crackled through the weak signal, punctuated by a rattling cough that made Brianna's heart clench. He said people like us don't qualify. Said our kind ain't good investments. Brianna stopped walking. The red dirt road stretched empty before her, lined with houses showing foreclosure signs. Mama, don't worry. I just finished a 14-hour shift. I'll figure something out. I always do. But even as she said it, the numbers screamed in her head. $45,000 for her mother's heart surgery. $12,800 still owed on the mortgage. 28 days until the bank took their home. Her salary? $2,400 a month. Barely enough for groceries and medicine. Baby, that hall boy came by again, her mother said, quieter now. Derek. He had papers. Said he could make everything go away if you'd just... I know what he wants, Mama. Brianna's jaw tightened. I'm not for sale. She hung up and reached into her pocket, fingers finding the worn wooden comb she'd carried for 10 years. The letters W+B were barely visible now, smoothed by 3,754 days of hoping. Everyone said she was crazy. A promise from a starving 12-year-old boy? A childhood fantasy? Her friends had moved on, gotten married, had kids. Derek Hall, 30 years old, BMW driving, suit-wearing Derek Hall, had been circling for months, offering to save her family in exchange for her hand and her land. She touched the comb again. You promised, Wesley, she whispered to the empty road. Wherever you are. The BMW sat in front of her house like a chrome-plated threat. Derek Hall leaned against it, arms crossed, expensive cologne cutting through the evening air. Brianna. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Thought about my offer? She walked past him. Get off my property, Derek. He grabbed her arm, not hard enough to bruise, but hard enough to make a point. You're 21 now, all grown up, old enough to make smart decisions. His eyes traveled down her body in a way that made her skin crawl. A girl like you, from a family like yours. You should be grateful a Hall is even interested. She pulled free. Grateful? My father's been patient with your mama's payments. Most colored folks around here don't get that kind of patience. He stepped closer. You're young, pretty for a black girl. Don't waste it waiting for some fantasy. Brianna's voice stayed steady despite her pounding heart. I'm 21, Mr. Hall. Young enough to have my whole life ahead of me. Old enough to know a bad deal when I see one. The deal is simple. Derek pulled papers from his jacket. You marry me, sign over the land, your mama gets her surgery, and everyone's happy. This property is worth $2.8 million once the new highway comes through. We're offering $85,000. More than fair. More than fair? Brianna laughed bitterly. You're offering 3% of what it's worth. Derek's smile hardened. Think about your sick mama. Think about what happens when you're both on the street. You're too young to be homeless. Get off my property. He walked backward to his car, hands raised in mock surrender. You've got 28 days, little girl. Then this house belongs to the bank, and the bank belongs to my daddy. Tick-tock. The BMW's engine roared, and he was gone. Brianna's hands shook as she climbed the porch steps, the same steps where, 10 years ago, she'd found a starving boy in the rain. 10 years earlier. 11-year-old Brianna Thompson pressed her face against the rain-streaked window. Lightning split the sky. Thunder shook the walls. Then she saw him. A small figure huddled under their porch. A white boy, maybe 12, skeleton thin, clothes hanging off him like wet rags. No shoes, cuts on his feet, shivering so hard she could see it from inside. Mama! Mama! There's a boy outside. He looks really sick. Dorothy Thompson came to the window, face cautious. Baby, we don't know who that is. But Mama, he's gonna die out there. He's just a kid like me. Dorothy looked at her daughter's desperate eyes, then at the trembling boy. Something shifted in her expression, fear giving way to something older, deeper. Lord, forgive me if I'm wrong. Go get him, baby. Brianna burst through the door, rain soaking her immediately. She grabbed the boy's ice-cold hand. Come on! My mama says you can come in. He was too weak to resist. She pulled him inside where Dorothy was already heating soup and gathering blankets. For 3 days, they nursed him back to life. His name was Wesley. He'd never known his parents. The foster home he'd escaped had beaten him daily. He'd walked for 2 weeks, eating garbage, sleeping under bridges. He was 12 years old and had already seen more cruelty than most people see in a lifetime. But in those 3 days, something else happened. Brianna sat beside him every evening, teaching him to read from her school books. Wesley was smart, frighteningly smart, absorbing words like a desert absorbing rain. He loved stories about airplanes. One day I'll have a plane, he told her. You're funny, she laughed. On the 3rd night, Wesley found a piece of wood and her father's old carving knife. His hands shook as he worked through the darkness. By morning, he presented her with a crude wooden comb, the letters W+B carved into the handle. I made 2, he said shyly. One for you, one for me. So we don't forget each other. Day 4. The storm had passed. Wesley stood on the porch wearing Mr. Thompson's oversized shirt, a small backpack stuffed with food Dorothy had insisted he take. Where will you go? Dorothy asked, tears in her eyes. You're just a child. I'll find somewhere. I always do. Wesley squared his thin shoulders. But if I stay, bad people might come looking. I don't want to bring trouble to good people. Brianna ran to him, her wooden comb clutched to her chest. You can't go! Wesley took her hands. His eyes, too old for his young face, met hers. Brianna, I don't have anything to give you. I'm nobody. You're not nobody. You're Wesley, my friend. He took a deep breath. His voice shook, but his words were steady. When I grow up, I'll come back. I'll be super rich, and I'll marry you, because you're the nicest person I ever met. Brianna laughed through tears. You're silly. We're just kids. I know, but I mean it. I never lie. I don't know how. Promise? Promise, even if it takes forever. He walked down the dirt road, turned once to wave, and disappeared around the corner. Brianna stayed on that porch until darkness fell, wooden comb pressed against her heart. Present day. 21-year-old Brianna sat on that same porch, holding that same comb. Inside, her mother's coughs echoed through thin walls. "You promised, Wesley," she whispered. She didn't know that tomorrow, everything would change. 6:48 a.m. Brianna scattered feed for the chickens, still in her pajamas, hair messy, wooden comb tucked in her pocket as always. Another day of worrying. Another day of waiting for a foreclosure notice. Then she heard it. Not a car engine, not a crop duster. Something bigger, closer, louder. She looked up and froze. A private jet. A massive, gleaming white private jet was descending toward the cornfield behind her house. "What the?" The aircraft touched down with a roar that sent chickens scattering in every direction. Dust billowed. The engines whined down. Neighbors emerged from houses, rubbing sleep from their eyes, mouths hanging open. Linda Davis, Brianna's neighbor, came running. "Brianna, what in God's name?" Dorothy Thompson appeared on the porch, clutching her cane. "Lord have mercy." The jet's door opened. Stairs descended. A man emerged. He was young, early 20s at most, tall, wearing a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than Brianna's annual salary, Italian shoes, a watch that caught the sunrise like a diamond. But his face... Brianna's hand went to her pocket, to the wooden comb. The young man walked toward her, his own hand reaching into his jacket. He pulled out a wooden comb, identical to hers, worn smooth by years of touching. "I told you I'd come back." Brianna couldn't breathe. "Wesley?" He stopped 10 feet away. His eyes, those same eyes, older now but unchanged, glistened with tears. 3,754 days, he said. I counted every single one. Her voice cracked. You're 22 now. We're adults. I know. He stepped closer. I grew up, but I didn't grow out of my promise. Within 2 hours, half of Millbrook had gathered at the Thompson farm. Pastor Thomas Johnson arrived first, falling to his knees when he recognized Wesley. That boy, that starving boy I pointed toward Memphis 10 years ago. Linda Davis recorded everything on her phone, tears streaming down her face. I saw him walking down the road back then, skinny as a rail. I closed my curtains. I didn't help. News vans appeared. Social media exploded. Someone had already identified Wesley Harris, founder and CEO of Harris Technologies. Net worth, $8.6 billion. Age, 22. The youngest self-made billionaire in Mississippi history. Then Gregory Hall's black Mercedes screeched into the driveway. What the hell is going on here? The bank owner, 55 years old, face red with confusion and fury, stormed toward the crowd. Derek followed, equally enraged. You can't just land aircraft on private property, Gregory shouted. Wesley turned, his expression shifting from warmth to ice. It's not your property, Mr. Hall. The Thompson family owns this land, for 27 more days according to your bank's paperwork. Gregory squinted at him. Who are you? You look like a kid playing dress-up. I'm 22, old enough to run a company, old enough to remember things. Remember what? Wesley's voice went flat. December 2016. I was 12 years old, starving. I came to your restaurant, asked if I could wash dishes for food. Gregory's face flickered with something. Recognition? Fear? You had your manager throw me out, Wesley continued. You said, and I quote, "We don't serve your kind here. Try the dumpster behind the gas station." Gasps rippled through the crowd. I remember every word, Wesley said. I wrote it down that night. I've kept that list for 10 years. Everyone who helped me. Everyone who hurt me. Gregory sputtered. That's I throw out beggars all the time. You can't expect... I'm Wesley Harris. Wesley pulled out his phone, showed a document. Founder and CEO of Harris Technologies, the company that acquired Southeastern Regional Bank Group 6 months ago. He let that sink in. Which includes Hall's Community Bank. I'm your new boss, Mr. Hall. The silence was absolute. Gregory's face drained of color. That's impossible. You're just a kid. I was just a kid when your restaurant threw me out. I was just a kid when Mrs. Thompson took me in. Wesley smiled coldly. Now I'm the kid who owns your bank. Wesley's assistant, a young woman about his age, brought a leather briefcase from the jet. I've been preparing this since I was 18, Wesley told the crowd. 4 years of investigation. He spread documents across a folding table. 156 loan applications from black families over 12 years. All denied. 89 applications from white families with worse credit scores. Approved. Pastor Thomas Johnson moved closer, studying the papers. My congregation. Half of them applied at Hall's bank. Interest rates, Wesley continued. 3.2% average for white borrowers. 8.9% for the few black borrowers who managed to get approved. Derek Hall stepped forward. You can't prove 34 loan applications from black families in the past 18 months alone, Wesley cut him off. You personally denied every single one, Derek. I have the records, with your signature. Linda Davis pressed her hand to her mouth. My sister applied last year. She had better credit than half the white folks in this town. Wesley pulled out another file. The Thompson case specifically. Brianna and Dorothy moved closer. Mrs. Thompson. Wesley's voice softened. The woman who saved my life when I was 12 years old? Your family has paid $98,000 in mortgage payments over 15 years. Dorothy nodded slowly. Your original loan was $65,000. Wesley showed the paperwork. Your current balance, according to Hall's bank, $12,800. He pointed to specific lines. Where did the other $20,200 go? Dorothy's eyes widened. Hidden fees? Altered statements, unauthorized charges, falsified documentation. Wesley looked at Gregory Hall. You've been robbing the woman who gave a starving child her last bread. These are lies, Gregory shouted. Fabrications! I'll have my lawyers. A black SUV pulled up quietly. A man in a suit emerged, badge visible. FBI Agent Wilson, the man announced. Gregory Hall, Derek Hall, you are persons of interest in an ongoing federal investigation into civil rights violations and financial fraud. The crowd's phones rose higher. Everyone was recording now. Gregory's voice cracked. You can't do this! I have connections. I have lawyers. Wesley's expression didn't change. Your lawyers are already cooperating with the investigation. 2 of them. In exchange for immunity. After I left here at 12, Wesley told the gathered crowd, I had nothing. Just the clothes the Thompsons gave me and my wooden comb. He held up the worn piece of wood. I walked for 3 days, slept under bridges, ate from garbage cans again. Brianna's tears fell freely. She'd wondered all these years what had happened to him. Then I found George and Helen Miller, an elderly couple who ran an electronics repair shop in Memphis, retired teachers who opened a small shop to stay busy. He smiled at the memory. Mr. Miller taught me to fix computers. He said it reminded him of teaching, watching someone learn. By 14, I was coding, self-taught from library books and YouTube. The crowd listened in rapt silence. Mrs. Miller homeschooled me, former English teacher. She said education was the only thing nobody could take away. He took a breath. At 16, I built my first app, sold it for $5,000, reinvested everything. At 17, my first company. At 18, my first million. Linda Davis shook her head in amazement. Just a boy from nowhere? Mr. Miller died when I was 19. Heart attack. Mrs. Miller followed a year later. They said she died of a broken heart. Wesley's voice wavered for the first time. They left me everything. Not much money, but all their love, all their belief. He looked at Brianna. Every night for 10 years, I looked at this comb. I kept track of everything happening in Millbrook. Read the local paper online. I knew about your mother's illness. I knew about Derek's harassment. I knew about the land scheme. Brianna's hand went to her pocket, to her own comb. I was waiting to be ready, Wesley said. Not just rich, powerful enough to fix everything. Why now? Pastor Thomas Johnson asked. 28 days until foreclosure. I couldn't wait anymore. Wesley stepped toward Brianna. I'm sorry I didn't come sooner. Money alone wasn't enough. I needed legal power, financial power, proof. I needed to be able to protect you forever, not just for one day. First things first. Wesley snapped his fingers. His assistant tapped her tablet. Thompson Mortgage, $12,800. Tap. Paid. Zero balance. Effective immediately. Dorothy Thompson gasped. Brianna caught her as she swayed. Mrs. Thompson's surgery. Best cardiac surgeon in Memphis. Flight leaves tomorrow. All expenses covered. Dorothy's hands flew to her face. I can't. You don't have to. I do. Wesley's voice was thick. You saved my life with soup and a blanket. You gave a stranger's child your bread. I can never repay that, but I can try. He turned to the crowd. But I'm not just here for the Thompsons. I'm here for Millbrook. More documents appeared. Thompson Family Trust, $5 million. Your family will never worry about money again. Brianna couldn't speak. Millbrook Community Development Fund, $20 million. Every family cheated by Hall's Bank will be repaid, with interest. Estimated restitution, $4.2 million. Murmurs swept through the crowd. And Harris Technologies will build its Southeast Regional headquarters right here in Millbrook. 500 jobs, good jobs, for this town that raised the girl who saved me. The crowd erupted. Cheers, tears, disbelief. But Wesley wasn't finished. He walked to Brianna, took her hands, and, before the entire town, news cameras and social media's watchful eyes, knelt in the red Mississippi dirt. Brianna Thompson. Her whole body trembled. 10 years ago, I was a 12-year-old boy who promised an 11-year-old girl I'd come back rich and marry her. I was a child. I had nothing. Most people would say that promise meant nothing. He pulled out a small velvet box. But I meant every word, and you believed me. He opened the box. A simple gold ring. Inside engraved, W+B. Will you marry me? Not because I'm rich now, but because you loved me when I was nothing. Brianna pulled out her wooden comb, worn smooth by a decade of hope. She pressed it against his. 2 halves, 1 whole. I've been waiting 3,754 days to say yes. The crowd exploded. But Brianna leaned close, her next words just for him. I would have said yes if you came back with nothing. I wasn't waiting for the money. I was waiting for you. Wesley's composure finally broke. Tears streamed down his face. I know, he whispered. That's why I had to earn everything else. To be worthy of someone who would have loved me anyway. Dorothy Thompson hobbled forward, took Wesley's face in her hands. You were just a scared little boy on my porch. Now look at you. I'm still that boy, Mrs. Thompson, just taller. She laughed through tears. You can call me Mama now. 2 weeks later, FBI Field Office, Memphis. Agent Wilson stood before a room full of federal investigators, clicking through slides on a large screen. "It's bigger than we initially thought," he said. "Hall's community bank was the tip of the iceberg. Their practices are connected to a network of 12 banks across 6 states: Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Georgia. The pattern is systematic." The slide showed a map with red dots clustering in predominantly black neighborhoods. Target black communities with predatory lending, inflate interest rates, add hidden fees, force defaults, seize properties below market value, sell to developers at massive profits. He clicked to the next slide. Total estimated damages across the network, $47 million over 15 years. Wesley sat in on the briefing, the youngest person in the room by decades. His company's data analysis had cracked patterns that federal investigators had been trying to trace for years. "The algorithms we built mapped discrimination patterns across 2 million loan applications," Wesley explained when asked. "Once you see it in aggregate, it's undeniable. This wasn't just individual bias, it was organized, systematic. Someone designed this." The investigation expanded rapidly. 89 families came forward in Millbrook alone, 340 families across the region. Many had lost homes during the 2008 financial crisis, homes that should have been saved with proper modifications that the banks deliberately denied. A class action lawsuit formed within days. Gregory Hall attempted to flee the country 5 days after the confrontation. He was stopped at Memphis International Airport, his passport flagged by federal authorities. He now wore an ankle monitor and couldn't leave his property. His wife, Patricia, filed for divorce within the week, a transparent attempt to protect her own assets from seizure. Derek Hall took a different path. He showed up at Pastor Thomas Johnson's church at 7 in the morning, 3 days after the confrontation. The sanctuary was empty, but Thomas was there, as he always was at dawn, preparing for the day. "Pastor?" Derek stood in the aisle, unshaven, wearing wrinkled clothes. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. I don't know what I need." Thomas Johnson studied the young man. He'd known Derek since childhood, had watched him grow from a sweet boy into a cruel replica of his father, had prayed for years that something would break through. "Sit down, son." Derek collapsed into a pew. "I'm 30 years old. My whole life I did everything my father told me. Believed everything he said. About business, about people, about..." He swallowed hard. "About black people. About how they were looking for handouts, how they couldn't be trusted, how we were doing them a favor by even letting them in our bank." Thomas said nothing, just listened. And then this kid, this 22-year-old kid, shows up in a jet and tears down everything in an hour. Derek's voice cracked, and I realized I'm not even mad at him. I'm mad at myself, because somewhere deep down, I always knew it was wrong. I just didn't want to see it. "That's a start," Thomas said quietly. "I want to cooperate. With the FBI. With everyone." Derek looked up, eyes red. "I'll testify against my own father if I have to. Not to save myself. I don't deserve to be saved. Just because it's right. Because it's what I should have done years ago." Thomas Johnson placed a hand on Derek's shoulder. "Redemption isn't one moment, son. It's a direction. You've turned around today, earned. But tomorrow, you have to keep walking that direction. And the day after. And the day after that. That's the hard part. Anyone can apologize once." Derek nodded slowly. "I understand. I'm not sure you do yet, but you will." Pastor Thomas Johnson organized a town hall meeting at the Methodist Church, the largest building in Millbrook. All victims of Hall's Bank were invited, but so were those who had looked away, those who had benefited, those who had stayed silent. The church was packed, standing room only. Linda Davis approached the microphone first. Her hands trembled so badly she had to grip the podium. "I've been the Thompsons' neighbor for 23 years, she began. "I watched them struggle, saw how the bank treated them different from white folks, saw how Dorothy had to work 2 jobs after her husband died while the bank kept finding new fees to charge her." Her voice broke. "And when that little boy came through town 10 years ago, Wesley, I saw him walking down the road, skinny as a rail, clearly starving, couldn't have been more than 12 years old." The crowd was silent. I closed my curtains. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Told myself it wasn't my business. Told myself someone else would help. Someone always does, right? That's what I told myself. She looked at Dorothy Thompson in the front row. "The Thompsons helped, and I didn't. I let that child walk past my house without offering him so much as a glass of water." She wiped her eyes. "I'm asking for forgiveness I don't deserve." Dorothy Thompson rose slowly, using her cane. She walked to the front of the church and embraced Linda. "I forgave you a long time ago, Linda. I just didn't tell you because you never asked." She pulled back, held Linda's face in her hands. "Forgiveness isn't earned, honey. It's given, like bread to a hungry child. You give it because it's right." More confessions followed. The owner of the general store admitted he'd been charging black customers 10 to 15% more for years, just because I could, and I knew they had nowhere else to go. A teacher acknowledged steering white students toward college prep courses while assuming black students wouldn't be interested. A landlord confessed to charging black tenants higher security deposits and inventing maintenance fees that white tenants never paid. Each confession was met with pain, anger, but also, tentatively, the possibility of something new. Wesley spoke last. "I didn't come back to punish this town," he said. "I could have. Part of me wanted to. There were plenty of people who walked past me when I was starving, who wouldn't meet my eyes, who pretended I didn't exist." He paused. "But the Thompsons didn't teach me vengeance. They taught me grace. I was 12 years old and starving, and Mrs. Thompson didn't ask me what I deserved. She asked what I needed. He looked around the crowded church. "This town has good people and bad people. Most towns do. Most families do. The question isn't whether we've made mistakes, we all have. The question is, what do we do now?" The meeting ended with a pledge. A community fund, seeded by Wesley's $20 million, would be supplemented by contributions from townspeople, whatever they could afford. Focus areas: education, healthcare, small business loans at fair rates. Dorothy Thompson was asked what the fund should be called. "I don't know why you'd name it after me," she said, flustered. "Because second chances start with someone saying yes when they could say no," Wesley replied. "You said yes to a starving child. Everything else came from that." The Dorothy Thompson Second Chance Fund was born, Methodist Hospital, Nashville. 1 week later. Wesley and Brianna sat in the surgical waiting room, hands clasped so tightly their knuckles were white. The surgery had been going for 5 hours. The best cardiac surgeon in Tennessee was operating, but that didn't make the waiting any easier. "I've faced investors worth billions," Wesley admitted quietly. "Negotiated deals that could make or break my company. This is the most scared I've ever been." Brianna leaned her head on his shoulder. "She's strong. She raised me by herself after Daddy died. She never complained, never gave up. Like mother, like daughter." They sat in silence for a while. "We're 21 and 22, Brianna said eventually. "People are going to say we're too young to get married. People say a lot of things." Wesley kissed the top of her head. "People said I was too young to start a company, too young to acquire a bank, too young to matter." The surgeon emerged an hour later, pulling off his mask. His face was tired but smiling. Mrs. Thompson is going to be just fine. Full recovery expected. She's asking for her daughter. They found Dorothy in the recovery room, groggy but alert, her eyes finding them immediately. "Did I miss the wedding?" she mumbled. Brianna laughed through tears. "Not yet, Mama. We waited for you." "Good." Dorothy's eyes closed, then opened again. "I didn't save that boy just to miss the ending." Wesley took her hand. "This isn't the ending, Mrs. Thompson. This is just the beginning." The entire town of Millbrook, population 2,340, woke before dawn on the wedding day. 3,000 roses had been delivered from Memphis, their petals still dewy in their boxes. But alongside them, scattered across tables and woven into makeshift arches, were wildflowers picked by local children, black-eyed Susans, purple coneflowers, wild honeysuckle. Food trucks lined the dirt road leading to the Thompson farm, but next to them stretched potluck tables laden with casseroles, fried chicken, collard greens, macaroni and cheese, sweet potato pies, the culinary love of an entire community made physical. In the Thompson farmhouse, Dorothy helped her daughter into her grandmother's wedding dress. The vintage lace had yellowed slightly with age, but careful cleaning had restored most of its beauty. It fit Brianna perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her all along. "You're so young, baby." Dorothy smoothed the fabric over Brianna's shoulders. "But you've been ready for this for 10 years. Grandmother's pearls went around Brianna's neck, and the wooden comb, that precious, worn, irreplaceable wooden comb, was tucked into her hair. Linda Davis appeared at the door with a blue ribbon. Her eyes were wet. "Something blue," she said. "And something I should have given you years ago. My support, my voice, my willingness to stand up. At the local inn, Pastor Thomas Johnson helped Wesley with his tie. "Nervous, son? I've been calm in boardrooms with billions on the line." Wesley's hands shook so badly he couldn't manage the knot. "My hands won't stop shaking today." Thomas Johnson smiled, taking over the tie. "That's how you know it matters." Wesley's wooden comb went into his jacket pocket, right over his heart. Private cars began arriving, some of Wesley's tech colleagues from California, investors who'd believed in him early, but also 8 young people Wesley had helped over the years. Foster kids, runaways, teenagers he'd found living on the streets and quietly paid to educate, mentor, and support. A 19-year-old girl named Emma approached Wesley before the ceremony. "I was 15 when you found me," she said, her voice thick. "Living under an overpass in Atlanta. You didn't just give me money. You gave me a chance, paid for my education, helped me get an apartment, never asked for anything back." She hugged him tightly. "You told me. Someone helped me once. Now I help you. One day you'll help someone else. I'm starting a nonprofit next year for homeless kids. I'm going to keep the chain going." Wesley also found 3 adults who'd been in his abusive foster home, now 24, 26, and 28 years old. "We thought you died, Wesley," the oldest said, embracing him. "You disappeared one night and we never heard anything. We thought the worst. I ran, found something better." Wesley looked at each of them, survivors like him. "And I've spent the last 4 years trying to find all of you, to make sure you were okay, to help if you needed it." They had all survived, made lives for themselves, but knowing Wesley had been looking for them, had never forgotten them. That meant something beyond money. An hour before the ceremony, a figure appeared at the edge of the property. Derek Hall, uninvited, unshaven, wearing plain clothes instead of his usual designer suits. Most of his assets had been seized pending the investigation. Pastor Thomas Johnson intercepted him before anyone else could react. "I know I shouldn't be here." Derek's voice was hollow. "But I wanted to. Come with me." Thomas led him around the back of the house, where Brianna was taking a moment alone on the porch, the same porch where everything had begun. She stiffened when she saw Derek. Linda Davis and Dorothy moved protectively closer. Derek stopped at the bottom of the steps. Then, slowly, he knelt in the dirt. "I'm not proposing," he said quickly, seeing her expression. I don't know how else to do this." He took a breath. "Miss Thompson, Brianna, I harassed you, threatened you, treated you like property instead of a person. I saw you as a means to an end, a way to get your land, not as a human being with your own dreams and dignity." His voice cracked. "I'm 30 years old. I've had every advantage in life, and I used those advantages to hurt people. Your fiancé is 22 years old. He came from nothing, worse than nothing, and he used everything he built to help people." He looked up at her. "I don't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I wanted you to know that I see it now, what I did, what my family did. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be different." Brianna studied him for a long moment. 10 years ago, she'd seen something in a starving boy's eyes, something worth believing in. She'd waited a decade for that faith to be rewarded. Could she see anything worth believing in here? "Derek," she said finally, 10 years ago, a 12-year-old boy made me a promise. Everyone said he'd forget, that promises don't mean anything, that I was foolish to believe." She stepped down from the porch. "But I believed in him, because I saw something in his eyes." She looked directly at Derek. "I don't see that in your eyes yet, but I see the possibility of it. I see someone who might be able to change, if they really want to, if they're willing to do the work." She took a breath. "You can stay for the wedding, but your redemption is your own work, not mine to give." Derek nodded slowly, accepting this limited grace. "Thank you. That's more than I deserve." He took a seat at the very back of the gathering, not celebrating, observing, learning, beginning. 2,000 people gathered on the Thompson farm as the sun climbed toward noon. The porch, those same weathered boards, that same creaky step where a starving boy had once huddled against the rain, served as the altar. White chairs fanned out across the lawn, wild flowers and roses mingled in improvised arrangements. Wesley stood where he'd stood 10 years ago, his wooden comb pressing against his heart through his jacket. Pastor Thomas Johnson stood beside him, Bible in hand. The piano music started. A simple melody, played by a 16-year-old girl who'd received one of Wesley's scholarships. Then Brianna appeared at the end of the aisle. She walked with her mother, not given away, accompanied, supported by the woman who had made everything possible by opening her door to a stranger 10 years ago. Pastor Thomas Johnson's voice carried across the silent crowd. "We are gathered here on this porch, where 10 years ago a starving 12-year-old boy sought shelter from a storm, where a kind woman and her 11-year-old daughter opened their door when they could have kept it closed, where bread was shared and kindness was given and a promise was made." He paused, looking at Wesley and Brianna. Today, that promise is fulfilled. Not because of wealth, though wealth has come. Not because of power, though power has been gained, but because of faithfulness. 2 children made a vow. 2 adults are keeping it. Wesley's vows came first. Brianna, when I was 12 years old, I had nothing. No home, no family, no future. I had been thrown away by the world, told I was worthless, treated like garbage. His voice thickened. Then I met you, and you gave me bread. Your bread. Your only bread. You were 11 years old, and you showed me what love looks like. He took her hands. I promised I'd come back rich. But standing here, I realized something. The richest I've ever been was that night on this porch, when I had nothing but your kindness and your faith. Brianna's vows followed. Wesley, when you were 12, you promised an 11-year-old girl that you'd come back rich and marry her. Everyone said I was crazy to wait, that boys lie. that promises break, that I was wasting my life on a fantasy. She pulled out a worn piece of paper. But for 10 years, 3,754 days, I added one line to my vows each year. One line for each year I believed. She read, Year 1, I believe he'll come back. Year 2, I believe he's working hard. Year 3, I believe he thinks of me. Year 4, I believe he keeps his comb close. Year 5, I believe he's becoming someone. Year 6, I believe he still means it. Year 7, I believe even when it's hard. Year 8, I believe he'll be worthy. Year 9, I believe he already was. Year 10, I believe I was right all along. Tears streamed down faces throughout the crowd. Wesley Harris, I loved the starving boy on the porch. I love the man standing before me. I'll love whoever you become tomorrow, because you're the same person, the one who never lies. Simple gold rings, engraved inside, W+B. By the power vested in me, Pastor Thomas Johnson announced, by this state, this community, and this God who loves faithful hearts, I pronounce you husband and wife. He smiled. Wesley, kiss your bride. They kissed on the porch where they'd first met, and as their lips touched, thunder rumbled in the distance, and warm summer rain began to fall, soft and gentle, like a blessing. Nobody ran for cover. Dancing on the rain-soaked lawn, potluck tables feeding 2,000 souls, Wesley spinning Dorothy Thompson across the wet grass while she laughed like a girl. Pastor Thomas Johnson gave the toast. This love story isn't about a boy becoming a billionaire. Plenty of people get rich. This story is about two children who believed in each other when adults would have given up. That's the miracle. That's what we're celebrating. Dorothy spoke next. My Brianna never stopped believing, and that skinny little boy never stopped working toward his promise. That's what love does. It makes you into who you're meant to be. Wesley made one final announcement as evening approached. The Thompson farm deed. He held up an official document. Transferred to the Dorothy Thompson Trust. Tax-free. Forever. He paused. Plus 200 surrounding acres I've purchased. No bank will ever threaten this land again. Dorothy couldn't speak. She just held the deed and cried. Then Wesley pulled out a yellowed envelope. I wrote this 10 years ago, the night I left. I kept it, never sent it, waiting for this day. He read aloud, Dear Mrs. Thompson and Brianna, I am 12 years old. I don't have much education, so sorry for the bad writing. Thank you for saving my life. I don't know how to repay you, but I will try forever. I love Brianna. I know I'm just a kid, but I love her. I will come back and marry her when I'm older. I promise. I never lie. Love, Wesley. The crowd wept openly. Even Agent Wilson, still present for security purposes, wiped his eyes. As the stars came out, Wesley and Brianna sat on the porch. Their porch now, wooden combs pressed together. So, Mr. Harris, what now? Now, Mrs. Harris, we live together, finally. Rain fell softly around them. They didn't go inside. 6 months later, Millbrook transformed. Harris Technologies' Southeast Regional Headquarters opened its doors in a renovated warehouse on Main Street. 523 good jobs, 200 filled by locals who'd never imagined working in tech. Training programs brought in experts to teach coding, digital marketing, data analysis. The Dorothy Thompson Second Chance Fund grew to $23 million, fueled by donations from across the country after the story went viral. 89 Millbrook families received mortgage relief. Their stolen money returned, plus interest, plus damages. 156 small business loans were approved, all to families previously denied by Hall's bank. Brianna, still just 21, ran the new community health clinic. Wesley had offered her any executive position in his company. "You could be VP of anything," he'd said. "I became a nurse to help people directly," she replied. "That hasn't changed." She expanded services beyond what anyone had imagined possible for a town of 2,000. Free care for the uninsured, a mobile unit that visited rural areas twice a week, a training program for local youth pursuing medical careers. The Millbrook Standard, new anti-discrimination lending regulations developed with Wesley's legal team, was adopted by 12 states within 6 months. Federal legislation citing it as a model case moved through Congress. Gregory Hall was convicted on 23 counts of financial fraud, civil rights violations, and racketeering, sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Assets seized totaling $4.8 million, all directed to the restitution fund. Patricia Moore completed her divorce and moved to Florida, refusing all interview requests. Derek Hall received immunity for his cooperation and testimony. He started working at the Dorothy Thompson Second Chance Fund the week after sentencing, filing papers, answering phones, doing whatever needed doing, the absolute bottom of the ladder. "I don't deserve trust," he told Pastor Thomas Johnson. "I'm going to earn it, day by day, year by year, however long it takes." Linda Davis became the fund's volunteer coordinator. Pastor Thomas Johnson joined the Board of Trustees as spiritual advisor. 12 other townspeople who'd confessed at the community meeting now served in outreach roles. "We can't undo what we did," Linda told new volunteers, "but we can make sure we do differently from now on." Brianna was 23 now and 8 months pregnant with twins. She still worked at the clinic 3 days a week, despite everyone's protests. "I'm pregnant, not sick," she'd say. "Women have been doing this for thousands of years." Wesley, 24, split his time between his tech empire and Millbrook. He'd moved the company's charitable foundation headquarters to their town, bringing another 100 jobs with it. They lived on the farm, fully renovated now, with modern conveniences, but the porch remained exactly as it had been. Same weathered boards, same creaky step, same view of the cornfields where a private jet had once landed. Wesley's promised scholarship expanded every year, $500,000 annually now, supporting kids from foster care, poverty, difficult circumstances. 45 recipients so far. 12 had already graduated college. The Wooden Combs resided in a small museum in Millbrook's town square, behind glass with a plaque. "A promise kept is a life changed." School children visited weekly. Teachers used the story to teach about kindness, perseverance, integrity. The Dorothy Thompson Second Chance Fund model had been replicated in 15 cities nationwide. Each one adapted to local needs, but all kept the core principle: second chances given freely, with faith that they would multiply. Derek Hall, after 2 years of quiet service, was promoted to outreach coordinator. He'd earned it. Every penny, every responsibility, every small piece of trust. He visited his father in prison monthly, still trying to reach him. Gregory remained bitter, blamed everyone but himself, refused to acknowledge what he'd done. "He's still my father," Derek told Pastor Thomas Johnson after one particularly difficult visit. "Even if he can't change, I can. Even if he won't accept what he did, I can accept what I did, and try to make it right." Pastor Thomas Johnson preached a sermon that year that was recorded and shared millions of times. The miracle isn't that Wesley Harris became a billionaire at 22. Plenty of people are rich. The miracle is that he became kind, that he used power for love, not revenge, that he remembered the people who helped him and the people who hurt him, and chose to respond to both with grace. He paused, looking at his congregation. Brianna Thompson's faith planted a seed when she was 11 years old. Wesley watered it with every choice he made for 10 years. That's the real story. Not jets and billions. Just faithfulness. Just keeping your word. Just being the person you promised to be. Methodist Hospital, Nashville. The same hospital where Dorothy had her surgery 2 years earlier. Full circle. Wesley paced the waiting room while Brianna labored. Dorothy sat calmly, reading a magazine, occasionally telling him to sit down before he wore a hole in the floor. "She's strong," Dorothy said. "Just like I was. Just like her grandmother was." "I know. You just love her." "I know, baby. We all know." The delivery came at 3:47 a.m. twins, a boy and a girl. George Wesley Harris, named after George Miller, the man who'd taken in a starving teenager and given him a chance. Dorothy Brianna Harris, named after the grandmother who'd opened a door to a stranger and started everything. Wesley held both babies in his arms, one in each elbow, staring at their tiny faces. "You gave me bread when I was starving at 12, he told Brianna, who lay exhausted but glowing in the hospital bed. "You gave me hope for 10 years. Now you've given me a family." "We gave each other everything," she whispered. Dorothy Thompson came into the room, tears streaming down her face. She touched little Dorothy's cheek with one gentle finger. "Hello, baby girl. I'm your grandma. Named after me, can you believe it?" She turned to George, stroking his tiny hand. "And you, little man. Named after the kind man who helped your daddy when everyone else looked away. You're going to be strong and gentle, just like your daddy." In the nursery they'd prepared at home. The wooden combs hung in a glass frame above where the cribs would go. Below them, W+B, a promise kept. Legacy made visible. Faith made tangible. Love made permanent. Summer evening. Golden light slanting across the Mississippi countryside. Wesley, 27 now. Brianna, 26. George and Dorothy, 5 years old. Twins, inseparable, constantly finishing each other's sentences. They sat on the porch, that porch, always that porch, while the children played in the yard and Dorothy Thompson rocked in her chair, healthy and happy at 57. "Tell us the story again, Grandma." Dorothy smiled. The children never tired of it, and neither did she. "Once upon a time, there was a starving boy who knocked on our door." "Was he scary, Grandma?" little George asked. "No, baby. He was scared. There's a difference. Scary people make others afraid. Scared people need someone to not be afraid of them." "And then what happened?" little Dorothy demanded. Brianna picked up the thread. "Then your daddy made a promise." "To marry Mommy!" both children shouted together. "That's right. He was 12 years old. I was 11. Little Dorothy wrinkled her nose. "That's silly, we're only 5. Wesley laughed, gathering both children onto his lap. "It was silly, but I meant it. Every word." "What did you learn, Daddy?" little George asked, his favorite part. Wesley looked at his wife, at his mother-in-law, at his children, at the porch where everything had begun. "I learned that being rich isn't about money," he said. "When I was 12, I had nothing. But your grandma gave me soup. Your mama gave me friendship. Your great-grandparents, the Millers, gave me education and love. That was wealth, real wealth. Everything else, the company, the houses, the planes, that all came later." He pointed at the darkening sky where the first stars were appearing. "But the richest moment of my life? It was right here, on this porch, in the rain, when I had nothing but a promise and a wooden comb and a little girl who believed in me." "And Mommy believed you," little Dorothy said proudly. "She did, when nobody else would have, when everyone else said it was impossible. That's real treasure, baby girl. Finding someone who believes in you. Being someone worth believing in." Thunder rumbled in the distance, rain approaching. The children squealed and ran inside, giggling about getting their pajamas on before the storm. Wesley and Brianna stayed on the porch. They watched the rain come, just like 15 years ago. She leaned into him, her head on his shoulder. "You kept your promise, Wesley Harris. You never stopped believing, Brianna Harris. I never had reason to doubt." Rain fell on the porch where a starving 12-year-old boy had once huddled against the cold, where an 11-year-old girl had offered him bread, where a promise was made, where a promise was kept, where a family now lived. The rain fell, and they didn't go inside. They were already home. Have you ever believed in someone when everyone said you were foolish, made a promise you weren't sure you could keep, but kept it anyway? Studies show most childhood promises are forgotten within months. Wesley remembered his for 3,754 days, because Brianna's kindness was unforgettable, because some promises are too important to break. Drop A in the comments if you believe promises still matter. Share a time someone kept their word when it really counted, or when you kept yours against all odds. Subscribe because every week we share stories proving that character isn't about age or wealth. It's about choices. A 12-year-old boy with nothing, an 11-year-old girl with a piece of bread, a wooden comb, real love. Share this with someone who needs to believe in second chances today. Sometimes the most powerful promises come from the smallest voices. Because in a world where people break their word daily, 2 children proved that keeping your promise can change everything. Like, subscribe, and maybe make a promise worth keeping.